Hey everyone. If you're watching this, I'm not online right now, so there's no chat. This is recorded offline. I'm enjoying the spectacular natural landscapes of the state of Washington before I move over to the Netherlands. The Netherlands is pretty in its built environments, but it just doesn't have the forests and the mountains and the lions and the tigers and the bears and so on of the state of Washington. So I'm out there right now. I could be anywhere. I could be right behind you. You don't know. You won't find me. But I wanted to record this because I saw this little tidbit here. I thought it would be important to respond to it. I underdiscuss this on my stream because I kind of take it for granted that if you watch me, you're politically aware enough to understand that the Democrats, not just the Democrats, Republicans too, but specifically the Democrats, have no plans whatsoever to improve our healthcare system, at least not meaningfully. And this is in large part because healthcare represents a incredibly large bloated bureaucracy that it provides access to services with a near monopoly on it. Like it's not like you can get healthcare in a outside in America. Like your ability to access healthcare is pretty strictly limited to the apparatuses of the healthcare system, including the insurance industry. But like it has an inelastic demand, everyone needs it, which means that as the boomers grow older and they start to die off, the enormous wealth that generation holds can be sort of shuttled into, coincidentally, one of the only industries in America that's actually growing right now: healthcare and health services and elderly care. If you think that money's going to trickle down the generational ladder, you are wrong, bucko. Every year it is easily by far the fastest growing industry because the bureaucracy is bloating like a sponge to absorb the wealth of the boomers who will, spend more and more of their money increasingly consuming overpriced healthcare until eventually, inevitably, as all people do, they die. That money's not going to you. It's going to be liquidated so that elderly and health insurance services, or elderly care and health insurance services, can, make ungodly amounts of money. Such is the case with, services with an inelastic demand. You pretty much need healthcare no matter how expensive it is. Cancer treatment could be $1 or 1 million. You're going to die if you don't get it. It's the same with food, shelter. Adam Smith and some of the other earlier advocates for capitalism, back when capitalism was more of an academic proposition than it was the shit we're all stewing in right now, understood that services and goods that had an inelastic demand weren't capable of being as efficiently managed by free market forces as, say, luxury goods, which don't have inelastic demands. Whether or not you're willing to buy some luxury doodad may very well be heavily influenced by its price and how well that corresponds to your discretionary income. But for things like food or shelter, people will go into debt. You could triple the price on healthcare, and they have more than tripled, and people are still going to have to get it. So, speaking of Adam Smith, a little while ago, we looked at an interview between the current day Adam Smith, a representative for Washington's 9th district, maybe 7th, 6, 7, maybe. Is that still big? Like and subscribe if you thought that joke was funny. And he had an interview with Crystal Ball, and just demonstrated a degree of cynicism and dishonesty that I found vile. I mean, I really had to restrain myself while watching that interview. But the thing that I thought was most noteworthy about it in that interview was that Adam Smith, again, that's contemporary Adam Smith, a Washington representative, not historic Adam Smith. I'm just drawing a parallel here because they share the name and the concepts are related, supported bills that he now denounces because when he supported them, they were unachievable, but now they're achievable. In his case, it was defunding ICE. He supported defunding ICE alongside with, or abolishing ICE alongside Rashida Tlaib back when it was not likely to be possible. But now that that sentiment is growing more popular within the Democratic Party, he's like walking it back and pretending as though he didn't really support it. A common example of how Democrats will often pretend to be more progressive than they actually are. They'll front progressive positions unless it's possible they might actually happen. And this is kind of how you get the revolving door villain strategy, where you need a narrow majority to pass some progressive legislation and just enough politicians vote against it, which spares the majority of politicians from having to admit publicly that they also don't support it. Everyone gets to pretend to be progressive until the chips are on the table. Speaking of, hello, Hakeem Jeffries, someone who, in fairness, doesn't usually pretend to be all that progressive. Here's a Meet the Press interview snippet.
All right, let's move on to Medicare for All. You co-sponsored Medicare for All legislation from 2013 to 2021. You've not co-sponsored it since you became Democratic leader.
Isn't that interesting? From 2013 to 2021.
Will you put Medicare for all up for a vote if you become Speaker?
Well, listen, these are all conversations that the House Democratic Caucus is going to have. Right now, we're focused
Why haven't they been having it for years and years and years? Like, it's not as though it hasn't come up before.
on November 3rd, not January 3rd. What we are promising the American people is that we're going to fight to make health care affordable for every single American. And we know there's a lot of damage that Republicans have done that we've got to restore and repair. For instance, Republicans have enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. More than $1 trillion or so has been cut from Medicaid.
This won't fix it, of course. The fundamental problem here is that because demand for healthcare is inelastic, insurance companies and healthcare providers have been able to exorbitantly inflate the cost of everything they do and everything they provide. And they've built a bureaucracy around it to absorb that money to the point now where it's like an enormous building built on shaky stilts, you know? The God's honest truth is that when you go to a hospital or a doctor's office, the actual labor and equipment and, resources that go into providing you treatment have essentially nothing to do with the price they offer you. They charge you that price in part because they can. Where else are you going to go? I mean, it's not as though prices are openly advertised in a lot of cases. Oftentimes you don't have a choice on where you go, where your insurance allows you to go. And also, oftentimes your insurance will cover some significant portion of that number, though not all of it. So you're still footing the bill for a considerable portion of an inflated imaginary sum. This is not fixable through government spending. The government cannot fix this. We already spend an enormous amount of money on Medicare and Medicaid. The problem is that we are paying, by we I mean the government as well, overinflated prices for these services. If a company charges $500 for a vial of insulin and your only solution to that is the government should spend $500 to buy it up front so they can sell it to you for $5, the $500 that the government bought the vial of insulin for, that's taxpayer money. It still impoverishes the taxpayers in the long run. It just does so more indirectly. It's not a solution. The real solution, the actual solution, is Medicare for all. Study after study after study has found that Medicare for all would save the average American an enormous amount of money, in addition to saving lives, in addition to saving us even more money in the future, because the health benefits of Medicare for all would lead to higher degrees of productive efficiency in the population, as well as allowing people to catch diseases and conditions earlier. You know, what they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you feel comfortable going into the doctor because at point of contact the services are free, you'll probably get that lump checked out or that mole, or you're more likely to go in there for your creaky joint disease or whatever else, water brain syndrome, before it turns into full-blown water brain or whatever else. I didn't really think it out. There are a million studies, a million examples, a million analogies and analyses that have been done to describe the ways in which Medicare for all would be a superior healthcare system. The thing that I find particularly disgusting here is that, Democrats still have no plan and they kick the can down the road indefinitely and they lie to you about it. Hakeem Jeffries here is now opposing, to an extent, legislation that he's been willing to co-sponsor because when he was co-sponsoring it, he was still pretending to be more progressive than he actually was. And, back in 2013, he wasn't House Majority. Actually, I'm blanking. When did, hold on. Jeffries, after Pelosi sat back and was no longer a Democratic majority leader, what year was that again? I'm actually blanking. I'm not doing a bit here. He started serving in 2013 and he chaired the House Democratic Caucus in 2019. And yes, he succeeded Nancy Pelosi in November 2022. So it seems like he was willing to support progressive legislation for healthcare up until he became, the leader of the House Democrats, at which point he clammed up about it. And now we get this dishonest dribble about having conversations, It's just, I know this is very 101 if you watch me, yeah, no shit, Hakeem Jeffries is a dishonest piece of shit who kicks the can down the road and has no real solutions to these problems. But we're really running out of time here, man. On the slate of things that I'm going to talk about during this little batch of pre-recorded videos that I'm not recording live is the national deficit, because things are really getting out of hand. And when your proposed solution to the healthcare industry is charging inflated prices is what if the government spent more to buy at those inflated prices? You're just contributing to another nightmare down the line, No one's willing to really fix these problems. To an extent, no one can. The health insurance lobby in the United States is without question more powerful powerful than any individual politician and, in all likelihood, any individual political party. If the health insurance plus healthcare provider industries together wanted to sink a party, they could. The amount of money they have, the amount of influence they have. Do you have any idea how cucked the United States is to corporate? Sorry, I'm doing a rant again. Just Hakeem Jeffries, take it away. We all love to listen to you.
And what you're going to have is about 14 million Americans lose access to health care.
Do you personally support Medicare for all? Do you personally support Medicare for all?
No, as you indicated, I haven't co-sponsored the Medicare for All legislation that has been introduced over the last several years. I do.
You'll note he won't explain why, of course, because like the real reason is he was in favor of it when it wasn't politically viable. But now that it might be a conversation Americans are more receptive to at the moment, because it's not like healthcare has gotten any better over the past decade. It's only going to get worse for as long as we're alive until something fundamental is done. And remember, Medicare for All is, and I'm being quite serious here, at this point, as far as I'm concerned, the only serious solution. The idea that a single public option is sufficient. There are a million arguments, which I've detailed extensively, and so have serious healthcare professionals and, policy experts. There are problems with that. It does not work. Medicare for All really is the only possible solution to our problems. I think that anyone with a serious opinion on the healthcare crisis in America believes that as well. It's just that doing so, as is the case with many fundamental fixes in the United States, would mean going up against capital. It's the problem with democracy under capital, of bourgeois democracy, right? It's that you could have good things theoretically, but the people who would benefit from those good things, the majority of people, the working class, are not the people with disproportionate power and money to influence the actual implementation of those policies. So we all have to suffer from a system in which an unbelievably small number of people are the only ones benefiting from a largely irrational social and economic doctrine.
I think we need to figure out how to fix our broken healthcare system and then build something.
Remember how much shit Trump has gotten because he attempted so many times to repeal Obamacare, but very publicly never had a solution? Remember Concepts of a Plan in the debate back in God, was that 2020 or 2024? Everything in my life is just blurring together. We've made fun of Trump so much for just wanting to destroy American healthcare to the extent that it still exists, but not having a solution to fix it. But Hakeem Jeffries here is doing the exact same thing. He's not a random House rep. He's the Democratic House leader. And still it's like, oh, we need to have conversations. Dog, it's been years and years and years and years and years. And Obamacare was at best a Band-Aid fix. It was the plan of the insurers. Force everyone to have insurance so the pool is as large as possible. Hardly a solution to the fundamental issue, which is that, collectively the health insurance and health provider industries have a total monopoly on the care you provide for an inelastic demand industry. Just ridiculous, But Democrats get to get away with seeming like the adults in the room because unlike Trump, they're not completely retarded, so they don't make it as obvious they have no plans.
Better once we repair the damage that has been done. Now, that will include doing things like extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits so that more than 20 million
won't fix the problem. We pay too much for healthcare.
People who have seen their health insurance premiums skyrocket, in some cases by up to $1,000 a month. That's not sustainable, and that's something that Donald Trump and Republicans have visited upon the American people.
Just to be very clear, though, as a Democratic leader in the House, would you vote for or against Medicare for all?
I think, as you've indicated in your question to me, it's not legislation that I currently am co-sponsoring.
It sure would be nice if he would. I understand that the isthmus fish brain kind of inhumanity dictates here that he not provide clear and cohesive answers, but can't we all agree it'd be kind of nice if he would explain why he supported it for, in his words, 2013 to 2021, 8 years, and then suddenly stop supporting it and he won't explain why? That's kind of interesting, right?
Or that I support.
Okay.
But we do support the notion that we've got to find a path forward to fix.
Support the notion that we have to find a path forward to fix. Jesus Christ, man. I'm really sorry, guys. It's only going to get worse. Unfortunately, I feel like the healthcare bloat is only going to worsen over the next few years because the boomer generation does have the money to support and saturate the expanding medical industry / insurance industry bureaucracy. But after that, once 10 years from now, after that money's been soaked up and it's not coming back down, It's not like any of these motherfuckers pay taxes. Once it's been soaked up and isn't coming back down, I feel like, I don't know what kind of like lowered standard of living we're all going to have to get accustomed to. I say we as though I'm going to be in the country 10 years from now. Oh, you caught me. You cards, you caught me. I mean, it's not like I have health insurance now. I haven't had health insurance in the United States for years, which is, you know, to an extent part of the problem, because young, healthy adults don't want to get health insurance because it's obscenely expensive. Which means that the people least likely to require the insurance don't pay into the pool. But again, the problem here is just that the healthcare to begin with is too damn expensive. There's just no fixing through policy or second order, involvement, the fundamental problem that going into a doctor's office or a hospital and using up 1 hour of time and minimal replaceable resources should cost some hundreds or thousands of dollars. It's just a fundamental problem, you know? Like, it's not like you go into a hospital, you know, you get your emergency care, you get looked at maybe in total by various people for 15 minutes, and then the bill is some thousands of dollars. There is no way to fix that down the line if you treat that initial price as legitimate. It just won't work, you know? And at this point, you can't just cut the pricing because all of these hospitals and so on and so forth have insanely bloated bureaucracies. Take a look at the expanding administrative costs of hospitals over the past couple of years. As a matter of fact, hold on. Hospitals growing administrative costs. Like public schools, trust me, it's not the teachers who are getting more money. It's the massive bloat of administrative positions above them that exist to sponge up money. Jesus Christ, look at that. Growth of healthcare administration from 1970 to 2018. Physicians, a roughly 200% increase, which is not super far out of line with inflation, but administrators up over 1,000%. Trust me, this is not the only study that that indicates this. There are many different ways of tracking this basic data. Here, for example, is, hold on, let me see. Administrative and direct patient care expenditures from 2011 to 2023, where even in this time, the bloat in, not to say direct patient care hasn't also increased in cost, but like the extent to which administrative cost has made up a chunk of that, just an unbelievable increase. Here's oh, look at this. This reminds me of like being in school with the shitty photocopying. Look at that. Increase since 1970, 1%. The point I'm getting at is that there's a million ways to look at this data, but the fundamental problem is that the bureaucracy is expanding to absorb money like a sponge. And also that Hakeem Jeffries is a dishonest piece of shit. You know, you can take from that whatever you want. Peace.